Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Peñalba, and welcome to the Transmute Yourself weekly show. I want to start this event by giving you a little announcement, and it is that every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Central European Time, I'll be doing this very short, around 15-minute weekly show that I call the Transmute Yourself weekly show, where I'll be talking about different topics related to fear of commitment in love relationships and also other things related to issues in relationships such as anxiety in relationships, obsessive thinking, and other things like that. So tune in. And the purpose of all this free education, right, is to help you to find fulfilling relationships. And that's what we're here for. All right, so back to today's event. We'll be talking today about attachment styles and fear of commitment. Let's begin with the story of why I came up with this topic, right? So to give you this introduction, you have to know a little bit of my background in terms of my patterns that I had in the past with regard to relationships. So in my late teens and in my 20s, when I was in dating mode, you could say, when I was dating a couple of girls and having some relationships, I found out that I had this sort of strange pattern in relationships that I didn't really understand, right? So I was very anxious at the beginning. I was sort of fearing abandonment and was always doing too much. I would get a little bit too attached at the beginning, fearing that I would be abandoned by my partner. And then once things settled in the relationship, I would back up again and I would feel that maybe relationships are not for me, that this is not the relationship actually or the person for me. And then things would not work out and I would break up, right? So this cycle sort of repeated itself. And I was always thinking that it was simply not the right person for me. But then after I saw this pattern, actually after my last breakup, which was about 3 years ago, I started researching about commitment phobia, relationship anxiety, and other topics related to this. And I found out about commitment fears. And the main thing that always popped up was this attachment theory, which we're talking about today. And I, of course, had no idea what attachment theory was. But I found that there are various types of attachments, like emotional attachments, that we develop as we're kids. And depending on that, or our relationships will be very linked to that. So what I found out was that my pattern fit two actually of those attachment styles. And that was mind-blowing for me because I realized that I was not alone. That validated a lot of my feelings at that moment and simply made me see that actually this is something that many people go through, these patterns that I described, right? Depending on their attachment styles. So let's begin by talking about what is an attachment style. Attachment is usually it's the way that we as adults bond emotionally to other people, be it to other adults, be it to friends, to family, even to kids. So it determines pretty much the depth of our relationships, how confident we are expressing our emotions to other people, for example, how much we can trust others, how distant or how close we get in our relationship, and then ultimately the stability and even the success of a relationship. So attachment styles, as I was saying before, they're usually generated as we grow up. This is something that most psychologists agree on, but there are a couple of other factors which can be, for example, individual factors, such as the own personality of a person or of the kid, and also some experiences later on in life. Basically, the theory is that as an infant, emotional attachment is necessary to survive. So there are various studies that say that babies below 2 years old actually die if they're not touched or if the parents do not show enough affection to them. And then if they do survive this stage, they might actually have a lot of emotional issues later on, or mental problems. It doesn't mean that this cannot be changed, right? Something can always be done, but this is just to raise awareness of how important emotional attachment and affection actually is as we grow up. Now, attachment provides a sense of comfort and security, and in the end, as we grow up, higher self-esteem, which is very useful, as we know, as adults. Now, as I will be talking about the different attachment styles, I'll be telling you a little bit of where they come from in terms of our childhood, right? But I don't want you to use this as a means to blame someone, to blame your parents, or to blame the past. This is not at all the purpose of me giving you this information. It is just to raise that awareness and to maybe give you some clues of why you have been acting in a certain way, maybe even why you have been attracted to certain people, so that you can break the cycle if that's what you want to do, and you can actually do something about it. Do something with that information, which is usually to get you to shift your attachment style into a healthier one, into a more secure one. Okay, so let's begin with the first attachment style, which is the secure attachment style. Now, if you have a secure attachment style, most probably your parents were very sensitive to your needs, meaning that they were sensitive to the need of security, for example, of affection, of autonomy. That means that they would be there for you, they would show you love. At the same time, if you needed some space to explore your world, they would give you that space as well, and which is also very important as well. Now, kids or adults already that have this secure attachment style, they feel well, they feel comfortable in relationships. They are comfortable setting boundaries, for example, expressing their feelings as well. They are not conflict avoidant, so they know how to speak up when it's necessary. They might not be, they're usually not codependent, and that means that they know the importance of a relationship, but they are not depending on the relationship to be happy, right? And to have a sense of confidence. Now, let's move on with the next attachment style, which is the anxious attachment. Parents of kids with an anxious attachment usually were not sensitive to the kids' needs, meaning, again, to autonomy, to affection, to security. And now these parents might tend to be very cold, distant, or they might even be overly anxious themselves and fearful. So some of these characteristics could have gone also to the kids, right? So people having an anxious attachment usually feel worried in relationships. They might fear most of the time that their partner is going to abandon them. So they might end up doing a lot for them in order to avoid this. They might be jealous, clingy, or even obsessive with the relationship. This is very interesting. People with an anxious attachment style actually might end up pairing up with people that are cold and that might be dominant or dismissive. And why is this? It might be because it validates how they feel about themselves. So again, people with an anxious attachment style might have low self-esteem in general, might just view themselves as negative, and then if they find someone that validates that gives them that validation subconsciously makes them feel that it's something that is familiar, right? And if they're familiarized with something, that subconsciously is attractive. This is usually how it works unless until we're aware of that and we can break that cycle. Now let's go on with the dismissive avoidant attachment style. This is the one of the two types that are mostly related to fear of commitment in relationships. Usually, parents of dismissive avoidance are strict parents. They tend to be very cold as well, distant. They might not tolerate or promote emotional expression at home. They might want the kids to be independent and strong since a very early age. Now, people with this type of attachment, they tend to be very cold, very distant. They disconnect very easily with others. They, for example, might not feel comfortable looking in the eyes to other people. They might have beliefs such as relationships are worthless, or I'm okay by myself. I don't need others. I don't need relationships in general, or that relationships equal uh, cutting out my freedom, right? And again, these people might pair up very well. They might be a good match with people with an anxious attachment style. And why is this? Again, because they have this belief that relationships are a waste of time and that they imply losing their freedom. So they might find someone that validates that. And as it is familiar, it might be attractive for some time, and then it might end up in chaos until we're able to break that cycle by being aware of it. Now let's talk about the last attachment style, which is the fearful avoidant attachment style. This is the most, I could say, or psychologists agree that this is one of the most complicated, if not the most complicated attachment style, because it combines elements from the anxious attachment and from the dismissive attachment that I just mentioned, right? Now, usually parents of people with this type of attachment are strict parents. They might be actually very chaotic in their ways of treating their kids, meaning they have contrasting behaviors such as sometimes being cold, sometimes being affectionate. So this might confuse the kids. This inconsistency and sort of unpredictability might have the kids wanting to come to the parents, but at the same time wanting to fear or fearing the parents. And they might carry this behavior as when they're adults, right? It is also said that some kids of having this fearful, or some adults, right, having this fearful avoidant attachment might have had some type of abuse as they were growing up, or trauma. So, for example, their parents might have beat them up, or they might have seen their siblings being beat up by their parents. And this again creates this want to be there with the parents, this affection, but at the same time having fear. And this inconsistency again can show up as we grow up. Now, people with this type of attachment can want relationships, can actually come close to the other person in the relationship, but as things get too close, they might again fear the relationship and might withdraw. So they have this cycle. They get close, then they withdraw. They get close, and then they retract again. So these are the 4 types of attachment. I want to give you as a little bonus, right? After all the analysis that I've done and going in the past to some psychologists, I've come to the conclusion that the 2 types of attachment that fit me with the patterns that I told you at the beginning the most was the fearful avoidant and the dismissive avoidant. So I had some elements of both. On the one hand, I would want a relationship and would get close. On the other hand, I would deeply believe that I didn't need the relationship. So this is somehow like in between, right? And until I was able to see this and see some of the things that could have generated this, I was able to pinpoint it and not blame my partner or my relationship anymore about my patterns in general in the relationship and about how I was feeling, but really to see that it could be something that I was carrying over from a long time ago. Now, I want to give you this very quick homework, a couple of questions. One is, which type of attachment fits you the most? That's the first question. And the second one, considering the definition of the secure attachment style, what can you do today to move or to shift your attachment style closer to that? This has been your Transmit Yourself weekly show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see each other again next Wednesday. Thank you.